and they worry that this represents an overreach of government. This possibility actually does exist. And if you do not believe that it could exist, you must have been asleep for the last 10 years. However, the DSM-4 as it stands does not represent such an overreach. And while we have scholars like my distinguished opponent, I am confident that it is not likely to occur. Beyond that, there are life situations in which a person may benefit from counseling but do not meet criteria for a DSM diagnosis. It is a misuse of the DSM to render a diagnosis when clinical significance is lacking. Just as you would not submit the cost of a tune-up for your car to an insurance company, it is also, or likewise, fraud to bill an insurance company when the diagnostic criteria are not met. The anti-psychiatry movement is frequently associated with the counterculture movement of the 1960s that reacted to the use of what they call labels and stigmatizing. Of course, DSM-4 is careful not to label people, but to describe conditions. It does not label a person an alcoholic, but describes a condition of alcohol dependence that person may have. To quote the DSM-4, quote, "A common misconception is that a classification classifies people, when actually what is being classified are disorders that people have." A key feature of my epistemology is anchored in American pragmatic philosophy. Pragmatism holds that a proposition is useful if, by employing it, it helps us understand and solve a problem. In other words, we consider the practical consequences and real effects to be vital to the meaning of any proposition. Again, DSM-4 meets that test. Constructivism, on the other hand, is flawed, and its loosely appealing maxim, "learners construct knowledge," actually leaves us in a perpetual state of reinventing the wheel. As Goethe pointed out so long ago, knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. The DSM-4 is for the doer, the practitioner, the client, and the field. It is useful because it gives focus to treatment, clarity to the clinician, and hope to the client. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. O'Dwyer, for your poignant comments on the DSM-4. At this time, I would like to welcome Dr. James T. Hansen to the podium. Dr. James T. Hansen is a professor at Oakland University in the Counseling Department, where he has worked for 15 years. At the university, Dr. Hansen coordinates the Advanced Postmaster Specialization in Mental Health Counseling, oversees doctoral dissertation research, and teaches a variety of master's level courses, including research and testing and assessment. In addition to teaching, Dr. Hansen has published over 30 refereed articles in leading counseling journals. His primary scholarly interests are theoretical and philosophical issues. In counseling, critical examination of contemporary mental health culture and professional identity issues. He has received honors for his scholarly contributions. Dr. Hansen also has over 25 years' experience in working in various capacities in mental health realm. He has conducted individual and group counseling with outpatients, day hospital patients, and psychiatric inpatients. Furthermore, Dr. Hansen has extensive experiences evaluating and psychologically testing children, adolescents, and adults who have a wide range of mental health difficulties. Dr. Hansen has also served as a clinical supervisor and consultant to various mental health agencies. Welcome, Dr. Hansen.
I'd like to thank Chi Sigma Iota for putting on the conference and hosting this debate. Thanks, Roberta, for agreeing to moderate it, and to Phil for continuing to be my loyal opposition. Thanks, Phil. My position was accurately characterized by Phil and Roberta, but it's even a little more extreme than that. I don't only believe that DSM is mostly useless for counselors, but also clinically damaging for counselors and the counseling profession. First, let me tell you what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that psychiatry is a bad profession, and I'm not saying medications are bad for people, for mental health conditions. Both those things have been good forces to some extent in society, and I have no inherent problem with either. I am saying the DSM, which is largely a document developed by psychiatrists, if you look at the author list, it's all psychiatrists, for psychiatrists, is not good for counselors to adopt. Okay? So now that we're straight on that. I fundamentally understand Phil to be saying that a lot of people for a very long time have endorsed the DSM, therefore we should too. His position boils down to that for me. And I won't engage in a formal retort now, but only to cite the fact that a lot of people have thought a lot of different things throughout history were a good idea. And we would never endorse those things today. On to my position. I'm going to critique the DSM on three essential grounds. The first is psychometric, or the measurement properties of the DSM. The second is the status of the DSM as a diagnostic guide. And third is the utility of the DSM for counselors. Okay? So let me go over each of those areas at this point. Okay? First, the psychometric or measurement properties of the DSM. The DSM is a system that categorizes people. In order to be useful, it has to categorize people consistently, and it has to do so accurately. Okay? Categorical systems don't work, and they're not useful if they don't have reliability, the consistency feature, and validity, the accuracy feature. Let me give you an example to illustrate this. Consider your bathroom scale. Supposing you step on it and it says you weigh 50 pounds. You get off it, step back on it, it says you weigh 250 pounds. Get off it, get on it again, it says you weigh 500 pounds. What would you conclude about the scale? It's so wildly inconsistent that you can't possibly infer a useful measure of your weight from it, right? The DSM functions in the same way. There's lousy inter-rater agreement with the DSM, meaning that different clinicians who use it come up with different diagnoses all the time. This is proven in study after study. Okay? So the DSM functions like that broken bathroom scale. And just as the broken bathroom scale can't give you any kind of accurate reading about your weight, neither can the DSM give you an accurate reading about anything either. Now, this isn't only a small, esoteric, academic matter, psychometric properties. It directly has implication for the ethics of practitioners. We're assigning labels to people without any quantitative justification for doing so. Okay? It's the same as assigning weights to people from that hypothetical scale. Okay? Only, of course, to say that assigning labels from the DSM has many more grave consequences than does assigning weights from the scale. I think you understand the point I'm trying to make about measurement. Okay. Now, let's talk about the status of the DSM as a diagnostic manual. Bill would like to say that the DSM is largely cultural free, with only a few small culture variables in it. I would submit that anything that's developed in a culture can't be beyond that culture. Anything that we create somehow has the stamp of us on it. And that includes the DSM. Now, let's talk about the DSM then as a diagnostic system. Okay? And what a diagnostic system must have is a definition of normality. Right? Because all diagnosis is a deviation from some kind of normative marker. Right? Take medicine, for example. The normative temperature of the human body is about 98 degrees. If someone deviates substantially their body temperature from that 98 degrees in either direction, they're very sick, right? Okay. So if someone has a temperature of 105, does it matter what culture they're from or what point of human history in terms of whether they're sick or not? No. It is indeed a culture-free marker, the 98 degrees. So any diagnostic system logically has to have these normative markers in order to come up with a diagnosis, because all diagnosis is a deviation from normative markers. Okay? So what are the normative markers for the DSM? Whatever culture says they are at a particular point in history. So instead of like this, like 98 degrees, it's like this. It varies from cultural period to cultural period, right? Of course, this type of thinking has brought us the greatest cures in medicine. In fact, the greatest mass cure in medicine occurred in 1973 at the APA convention. And it was a remarkable cure, and millions of people were instantly cured. You know what I'm talking about?
Homosexuality.
That's right. At the APA convention in 1973, American Psychiatric Association, the group of psychiatrists, by a narrow vote, voted that homosexuality should no longer be a diagnosis in the DSM. In that instance, millions of people were cured. They no longer had it. Okay. Now, aren't you suspicious of a diagnostic system that can cure by vote? Can we cure cancer by vote? How about diabetes? Of course we can.